Hello, everyone, and welcome to another PsyMood webinar series. I am so happy to see everyone today, this evening, this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are in the world. We thank you for being here. This is going to be a wonderful webinar. I see this being one of many because this is a topic that we're going to discuss quite openly for a long period of time. But for this first kickoff webinar, I'm so excited to be here with everybody. If this is your first time with us, I'm so happy to have you here. And if you've been here before and seen some of our webinars, thank you so much for coming back. We do appreciate all the support on social media and all the events. We thank you so much. And if you haven't been here, my name is Ross. I am the host of the webinars and podcast, along with being a mental health consultant. I am a hospice chaplain, and I work in the end-of-life care space here in Ontario. We have two amazing women. Well, all women are amazing. All people are amazing, but two amazing women here this evening that are going to be discussing a very powerful topic, one that is close to my heart, one that is, I think, a topic that we need to talk more of. I would love for them to introduce themselves to all of you because their bio, their journey is so beautiful and I don't want to butcher it. So Terry, I'll start with you if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure, Ross. Well, I'm a human services counselor and I'm also a certified life skills coach. And I do counseling virtually, have been doing virtual counseling. I just think that virtual counseling has so many benefits. I've counseled adults, children, and yeah, so that's part of my background. I've also studied disability studies, actually, and a published author of many topics. So yeah, Amazing. This is near and dear to my heart. Mental health and addictions is where I started off and then progressed from there. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And Patricia, I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself too.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Patricia Zonta. I'm a registered social worker and psychotherapist. My main focus has been in the past years working with mental health, but in the past 10 years, I still work with a community agency, so a women's shelter, working with domestic violence and abuse, so intimate partner violence. So I'm still doing that amongst other things that I do, and I work private practice as well, and still continue to do the frontline work because I feel it's very important to be able to be there at the moment when a woman really needs you. So to me, that's always been near and dear to my heart, and I continue doing it for as long as I feel I find the passion in it. So it's been 10 years. So it's been a while, and I'm hoping to continue doing it. So I think we'll have some really good discussion around that tonight.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you both very, very much for being here. I know you're both super busy. So thank you for your time. And yeah, today, this evening's topic is very, very profound. It is a topic that, mental health is something that we've all discussed. We discuss it openly on PsyMood, all our platforms. And in general, we speak about mental health a lot. But I think now more than ever, with the ever-changing world, we are noticing a lot more people speaking about mental health when it comes to women, the abuse that women are facing, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual. We're noticing a lot more of this abuse coming into through the world and through the news that we're watching. But both of you have been in this space for so long and work with so many individuals. And I think the word abuse gets thrown around a lot. And we assume that we think abuse is physical, and that's what abuse is. But I would love both of your thoughts on the definition of abuse and what that means in your space, because each of us work in different spaces and abuse may seem differently for all of us. But I would love to get your thoughts on abuse. And Terry, I'll throw it to you first. Your definition of abuse, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Patricia and I were talking earlier, and she's got a definition, actually an official definition, but to me, abuse is when you get a gut feeling, listen to it. If it doesn't feel good, how someone is treating you or a situation, that gut feeling is telling you something. And lots of women, and men for that matter, they just accept abuse from other people. They think that that's life, that's what life is, and it's not. And when we learn when it's not, boy, we can make changes in our life with the support of a network of support. So
yeah, very true. And Patricia, your definition, I think, is very important. I would love to hear your definition and your thoughts on abuse, because again, this definition kind of helps kind of guide us through that conversation.
Right. So I took the liberty of getting the United Nations definition only because I felt it was inclusive of different people, populations, and all that sort of thing. So I'll just briefly read it. So domestic abuse is also called domestic violence or intimate partner violence, can be defined as a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner. Abuse is physical, sexual, emotional, economic, or psychological actions or threats of actions that influence another person. This includes any behaviors that frighten, intimidate, terrorize, manipulate, hurt, humiliate, blame, injure, or wound someone. Domestic abuse can happen to anyone of any race, age, sexual orientation, religion, or gender. It can occur within a range of relationships, including couples who are married, living together, or dating. Domestic violence affects people of all socioeconomic backgrounds and education levels. So, we've got a big picture there. It affects a lot of people.
That's right? All encompassing.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
Yeah. So when we look at that, we know of people that have been in these situations. We know perhaps family members, friends, different people in our lives that have experienced this type of thing, but we never really know what to say or do to kind of help guide them along, or they may not know that they're going through this. They may think it's normal for them, whatever their normal is. So it's, I think since the pandemic, I do believe that it's opened up a lot of people's eyes as to what it is and how it's really prevalent in our society. And we're just starting to recognize that it needs to be addressed. We've always had it, obviously, but now it's to the point where, we really have to stop cycles if we can.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
There were commercials on television about it.
Yes.
Well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And I think, the commercials are a sign of this is something that needs to be talked about. And, it's a shame that it took COVID or a pandemic in general to bring this to light. I mean, this is something that is not just happening during COVID. This has been going on for hundreds of years, abuse of all factors in, when it comes to the women's and domestic violence. But it was COVID, as we were talking about before, that big influx of women saying, I can't leave a very violent, environment that I'm in because of the pandemic. I must stay quarantined. And in some cases, forcibly confining these females to an abusive relationship. And I think that really brought to light going like, we need to change things. If we're going to get better, we need to, listen, and we need to grow and develop. And COVID is, in a positive way, shined a really bright light onto that and domestic violence.
Definitely. And just, I at the beginning of the pandemic, when I was working, I would find that, myself and coworkers, we would discuss how quiet the phone lines had gone and our crisis lines weren't ringing at the very beginning. I think just everyone didn't know. It was a big panic as to, oh my goodness, I'm in this relationship. I'm trying to get out. I was going to get out. Now there's a pandemic. Where am I going to go? How am I going to get out of here? And now I'm really stuck and I have to stay. And talk about psychological, turmoil, like, what am I going to do? Including having children in the home and all these different things that they had to, take into consideration. So again, it's something that I think that if nothing else out of this evening's discussion, or today's discussion, we come up with just bringing awareness to people and bringing
100%
to our, our community partners. And, when we're speaking with people, taking into consideration everyone's, different situations. So whether it be cultural, whether it be, whatever their situation is, just being really open to understanding where they're coming from.
Exactly.
So maybe we can talk about some examples, Patricia and Ross, of abuse. So people really recognize it as abuse and not the norm or generations of violence or domestic abuse. I like the word you use, cycle, break the cycle, because so many families, it's just commonplace. And so they begin to think that it is a normal way to live.
Yeah.
So maybe we can just talk about a few examples of what abuse is.
Yeah,
sure. And before we get started with that, just two that I think in the last few years, and hopefully we can get back to that, we started in the school system, bringing in awareness to what a healthy relationship was with youth, so that they could see what it looked like to be in a relationship that wasn't healthy, because they also, could recognize that within their home. So we did, do that in the school system, but then with everything else, cutbacks, then COVID and different things, the program kind of doesn't really exist like it used to. I'm hoping it comes back because it's very necessary.
So beneficial.
Yeah.
So beneficial.
Starting at that level. So abuse. So for example, having someone come to our shelter, I can give you a quick, just a very, something that you would think brought to light something for a woman. For example, she was being financially abused. So by that, it would be every paycheck that she received, everything that she did was controlled by her partner. And she wasn't able to do more than, let's say this is your $100 for your groceries. You figure out how you're going to feed us for the week, right? So until one day she kept doing this. She kept, listening to what he said, until one day, I think she was talking to not her neighbor, but a neighbor's neighbor. And they were talking and discussing just a little bit as they were outside doing their yard work. And they were saying about how, they went shopping and how I had this much money and I bought myself this. And she started to recognize that she didn't have that ability. And she started to ask some questions about, how do you have that much more money? Well, it's my money and I can spend it. And my husband's is, for finances for the house, mortgage and groceries. But my money is, I can use it different ways. When this woman started to realize that she kind of always sensed that it wasn't right, but she got affirmation from the neighbor's neighbor that, yes, this is not right. I don't need to live like this. And there were many other restrictions, not being able to see her family. So isolation from seeing family. That's also another
big one.
Yeah, that's a big one too.
Really, really big one. So they don't get to talk to other people. They don't get to visit other people. All their time sometimes is controlled.
Yes. And your cell phone.
Sorry, Tricia.
Yeah, that's okay. Your cell phone use as well. You don't actually have cell phone use. And if you do, it's very limited. Because again, you could call someone and you could tell them what situation you're in, right? So they do everything they possibly can in their power to isolate someone. So anyway, so when she recognized that it wasn't right, she called, we talked to her on the phone, and she said, I really and truly don't want to live like this anymore. And I believe he's getting worse and things are not good. And I do need to leave. So, talking to her, planning on how to leave, those types of things, we did all of that. So there are different things. So financial is one of them. The obvious is always physical, that we all are aware of, but the emotional and the psychological abuse that comes along with being with a partner that is violent is really the most, I think, scarring and damaging for a lifetime. A woman's self-esteem is just down the drain when,
they don't even have it. They have no self-esteem. They don't believe they can do anything. They don't believe that they can leave because they are incapable of ever being able to make any money or take care of anything. The self-esteem is totally squashed.
Yeah, and they'll say to them, the partner will say, well, where are you going to go? Yeah, nobody else is going to want you. Who wants you? Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, and these are the types of things that they endure. So again, working with women and, in turn, working with their children, we're hoping to break that cycle. The more awareness that we bring to everyone, and the more awareness that we kind of, we don't want it to be taboo. We want it to be like anything else. If you need some help with something, just ask. But it's not that easy, because it's, you know, again, it's maybe a cultural thing, or maybe it's just something that you've been, you've known to think it's normal, and we don't do that in our family. And if I do, then I might not be, you know, accepted anymore. There's all kinds of different reasons why women, you know, aren't able to reach out and get the help they need when they need it.
Some are so embarrassed. Some are so embarrassed. They think they're the only one. And how could I let this happen to me?
Right. Right.
And yeah, a big part of it is also, Terry, that you were saying is acceptance. They're accepting that this is what this reality is, and this is what this situation is. And I think, you know, I used to work in a couple of local women's shelters, and that was one of the biggest things that I found with communication with the females there, and then also the staff as well, is we see the same individuals over and over again with the same situation, because instead of trying to go through all the loopholes and try to go through all the rings of fire to get support, in some cases, they just accept it. And they say, this is just the situation that I'm in. And I think, you know, one instance, I was speaking to an individual, and abuse was a topic that she was talking about. And she was actually saying that in her terms, the lack of help from powers to be was like abuse. She always would feel that she was lying. Everyone thought she was lying, you know, oh, you're just being dramatic. And, you know, the powers to be, that maybe the family, the hierarchy of the family or individuals around her would always just say, well, you know, it's not that bad, it could be worse. And I think a lot of times is we don't take these things seriously enough. We don't speak to it enough. And I also think as males, as, you know, individuals like myself, we also need to be a voice as well. You know, we need to be able to speak up on behalf of some females if they're not able to do it themselves. You know, again, it's a topic that's so sensitive for men to speak about, but it is something that we need to speak about, because coming from a single mom, I watched her come home in pain, physically and emotionally, from work because her work was abusive. She worked all these hours because she knew she had to. She had to accept it as, I need to pay bills. I have no other alternative. I have to do 15-hour days and then work on the weekends and overtime because I have to. And the abuse, even me as a young child, witnessing the aggression that she would receive at work, even at a young age, I knew that that was not acceptable. But again, you're in that situation. Well, I don't have the financial support to not do this. And I think that's a terrible situation for women to be in, that they can't get that support because of financial lack of affordable housing, all these kind of things that are preventing them from getting the help that they desperately deserve and need.
Right.
Well, sometimes when women leave, the abuser will send them messages that are really intimidating and continue the emotional abuse. And lots of times, unfortunately, they go back, but it's in so many cases, it's so worse than it was before.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they're not alone, and just fixing the problem isn't an overnight kind of thing. It's one baby step at a time. And I think the biggest step comes at the very beginning, just the leaving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I should have put just in there. Leaving.
Leaving. Yeah. Not just
big
leave.
Step.
Yeah. I think
then,
another thing that we're witnessing in especially in regards to abuse and women's mental health is the younger generation with social media. You know, that platform is, you know, is very toxic and very abusive for, you know, the physical and mental well-being of individuals of all genders. It's very aggressive. And I think that's also kind of growing within our modern society, is a lot of abuse comes from places where we're trying to just be ourselves, and we then end up getting abused through that. So it is something that we need to talk more about and get that support and find solutions, because this is something that will continue to happen unless we make changes. And I would love to hear from both of you your thoughts on, you know, we're talking about all of this and the hardships and abuse and of all aspects. How, in both of your thoughts and opinions, you know, this is a very loaded, powerful question. How do they get help? Like what kind of stepping stones would you create right now for individuals who are listening that are maybe themselves or friends of them that they know are in an abusive relationship or being abused? What stepping stones would you both create to help?
Well, I can start, Terry. I can
Sure.
just, I can tell you just, you know, going on your local website for a women's shelter, and calling in the crisis line and asking some questions, and you can call in anonymously, and ask to, you know, you have some concerns, you have some things that you've been thinking about, you're not quite sure you're in an abusive relationship. Maybe I'm just making it up. Can you help me clarify? So then going through the steps, okay, so what's happened? Well, I don't have my finances. They're not mine. I have to hand them over at the end of the week after I'm done working. Okay, so that's a sign. What else? I can't see my mother. I'm not allowed to see her. Okay, how long ago did that happen? Well, almost after we first started dating. So it's been some time, right? So, and then getting all these different things out of her, and then she can kind of see what we're going to kind of direct her and say, okay, would you like to have counseling, or would you like to speak to somebody regarding what you're going through, so that you can identify what these red flags are, and then based on that you can make other decisions. But first, it's opening up her eyes that yes, this is something you're experiencing, and yes, it is classified as abuse. Now she recognizes it, she accepts it, she tries to move forward, and then she gets assistance from us. Now, the other thing is, if mental health has really been a problem as well, and she's really having a hard time with depression, anxiety, and that sort of thing, which is very common with people that are in abusive relationships, their mental health is just, it struggles, is to connect them to Canadian Mental Health Association, to our, you know, community agencies that work with mental health, and have them work with them as well. So, and then family doctor, you know, all these different things that we can connect them to. And that's the beginning, that's the start right there.
Yeah, it's a start, and it's building a network of support so that they have resources to fall back on that will give them the skills and the tools to move forward. It's a process though, isn't it, Patricia? There's no way you can do it quickly. And,
no. And any small little progress
yes,
that's made, you know, it's to encourage and to empower the women to be able to say, you know what, I'm okay. Like, I notice that I'm managing, you know, and sometimes women will call in and say, I know I'm in an abusive relationship. I can't leave right now, but what can you tell me, or what can you help me with? What tools can I use in order to maybe not, you know, make him more angry in the evening? Or how can I just, you know, manage to have him, you know, not be upset with me? What can I do to help myself manage that situation if the argument, you know, escalates? So again, giving them tools on how to do that. So, you know, again, saying maybe, you know, what he's like when he gets home from work, because they describe what he's like. You know, he comes home, he's tired, he's hungry, you know, he might get upset with the meal, something may happen. Then it's towards the children, because the children haven't put their things away. He's very agitated. And we try to tell her, then you just let him do his thing. If he's got to be, you know, upset, you just stay away, you do your thing, you stay quiet, you don't escalate anything, you don't ask any more questions, you just allow him to say things, and you pretty much just maintain status quo, so that you know that you're not going to make it worse for yourself. I mean, right. Even that is just something, right? At least that they're not, she's not starting an argument. Don't push him back, because every time you push him back, he will push you even further.
Yeah.
Right?
Understood.
So it's just maintaining that status quo in that particular instance where you're trying to just survive that moment, because it can escalate quite quickly, right? So it's just keeping it at bay when you can. I mean, those are just some examples depending on the person's situation, right? They say, I don't want to leave, but how am I going to manage it? Sometimes we say, just walk out of the room. Sometimes we say, you know, if you've got flowers and plants outside, go outside and do something with your flowers and your plants. You know, let him just kind of, whatever it is when he gets in the home, and then, you know, you can kind of come back in and hopefully things have passed.
Yeah, true.
I guess coming up with a plan. But the plan has to be with the client. You can't enforce or push anything on a client. It has to be the client's plan. Would you agree, Patricia?
Yes, yes.
You can
Definitely.
suggest,
Yes.
and give resources, because they truly might not know that there are resources, and let them come up with the plan and support it. An example of that would be if they're planning to leave, well, maybe they should start off, you could say, examining the schedule, so that when are the opportunities? When are the opportunities? You know, I had a client a few years back, and he was so controlling. He actually controlled the amount of time when she would leave to go and pick up the children from school. And if she was late, oh my gosh, did she ever get beat up just because she was late? And he would accuse her of all sorts of things. But there are opportunities if they really look. And the window of opportunity might be so small. And in her case, it was so small, but she got out. And then the plan started. But it took a good year to just be able to move the other step forward.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would love to ask both of you the same question, because we were talking about this previously before our webinar this evening. Is, you know, do you find that women in an abusive relationship or a toxic relationship, after leaving, will tend to sometimes go back? And do you find that happening? And what are your thoughts on the reasoning behind that? Because I do know a lot of people, we talk and we discuss, why go back? Why are you going back? It is a very scary environment. You leave, as we were saying, Terry, not just leave, but leave. Why do you find that women sometimes tend to go back? I would love your thoughts on both of you on this. Terry, I'll go with you first.
They go back sometimes because they have no self-esteem. They don't believe they can make it on their own. They believe that they're such a failure that they're never going to be able to make it on their own. Self-esteem, sometimes they love this guy. That's one that really throws me for a loop. What do they love about him? When he's good, he's very good. But when he's bad, he's very bad. But they still remember the good times. And they really believe, because they've been told so many times in some cases, that the person that is the abuser, so sorry. They cry. I'll never do it again. I'll never hurt you. I love you so much. And I had one client that hated roses, because every time she got beat up, she got roses. She knew the roses were coming. She hated them. So fear, big one. And self-esteem. Patricia, you've had so much experience. So let's hear what you have to add.
Well, you know, I think again, we think it's easy to leave, but it's not easy to leave. So my how should I say, experience with it has been that I believe that it's a form of brainwashing. You know, they're pretty much told that they won't find any better. You know, where were you before I met you? You know, you're not going to amount to anything. No one else would ever want you, all those types of things. And not only that, but they go through cycles. So it's usually they come into shelter and they're still texting them. So the partner's still texting them while they're with us. So we kind of encourage, you know, think about responding and what you want to respond. And, you know, and then they might use the children. Well, the kids really want to see you. You know, why aren't you having me see the kids? I really miss the kids. I miss our family. So there's all kinds of different things they start to kind of like get to them, so that they're emotionally picking at them and saying, well, you know, our family, when we're really good, we're really good. I miss you. I won't do it again. I'm going to get some help. I've already applied, you know, I've already gone in to see somebody for counseling. You know, I'm going to work on myself. I can't understand why I'm so angry all the time. So they make the person believe that there's going to be a change, and they buy into that. They think, okay, maybe this time it's different, right? You always think maybe this time he's different.
Yeah.
And then you go back And when they leave, you know, we always say there's no judgment should you go back.
No,
Please please
Sure.
know that we're here to support you either way, whatever choice or decision that you make. And at that point, you know, if they do decide to leave and they do come back, then our doors are open, right? We're there for them. But it's again, there's love bombing. Now you're going to hear a lot of these terms. Gaslighting goes on, love bombing, the honeymoon phase, red flags. All of these terms have a lot to do with, you know, abuse. So it's definitely, you know, not an easy thing, but yes, I believe it's a form of brainwashing. You have worked at every angle of their emotional and psychological, you know, well-being. You've ruined that. So they truly believe that, yeah, you're going to change. And yes, I might be better off. And I can go back and maybe he'll be better. And then also now with the economy and housing as it is, they're thinking if I can't find housing, maybe I'll try again and I'll see how it goes. And if it doesn't work, then we'll see, maybe I can live, you know, I can do something else or whatever. But for the time being, they try to make that work for them because of lack of the affordable housing that's not there right now. So it's very difficult. So
and affordable housing is, let's be honest, it is a catalyst for a lot of things. And, you know, working in the communities, as we all do, working in the communities, the biggest issue is I want to leave, but where do I go? I can't go to a shelter because maybe I don't feel safe, or there is none because where I'm from and where I'm living, it's full, or there is not available women's shelter. It's joint shelters and I don't feel comfortable. And I think that's the hardest thing to hear is affordable housing and other situations going on in society are causing women to stay in a violent, abusive relationship. You know, when we talk about affordable housing is not just about the housing. It's about so many other different things. If we have access to affordable housing, you know, affordable support, affordable care, it will change the world for an individual in all aspects, not just a roof over their head. And I think we are in a society where we're putting women and men and all genders at risk because of the cost. And at the end of the day, one person's life is not worth more than money or housing or any of this stuff. We need to realize that we need to do more for those women that are in need. And I think also speaking from, you know, as a male, we as males need to do more in support. Now, it is women's rights, but I always say it's all of our rights. You know, we as all genders need to speak up for each other, because in some cases, maybe my voice is louder and maybe I can speak louder. And I think that's one thing that we need to utilize with this webinar is that no matter who you are and where you're from, women's rights are all our rights. Abuse is abuse. If you hear it, say something. If you see it, do something. And I think we need to take that action. And I think, you know, not getting too carried away, but I think we've been tiptoeing around this too much, and we need to be a little bit more firm, because both of you have witnessed, you know, these experiences, these stories, these individuals, and we need to do more and stop being so sensitive and speak. And I think that's one thing I think I would love to get your thoughts on is why did we wait for a pandemic to talk about this? Why is this something that is not more like prevalent as much as the, you know, the SPCA commercials all over the world? Why is this not as big as something like that?
Well, I think embarrassment, we talked about that briefly a little while ago, and the cycle that Patricia brought up, the cycle, and people think it's normal. And people are embarrassed about it. It's from all walks of life. It's not just poor people. It's not just certain ethnic backgrounds. It's you know, the rich and famous. They have the same stuff going on. So it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I think one of the most important things as a counselor is to really listen. And if somebody confides in you and tells you that they're being abused, acknowledge it. Acknowledge what they've told you. That was hard for them to tell you. It was hard for them to share. Very, very hard. And acknowledge it. And then just ask the questions that will, the open-ended questions that will bring out more information. And when you just acknowledge, sometimes people have nowhere to tell their story. And if they feel safe enough, then they'll share it. And if we acknowledge what they've shared with us, then there is a chance for change and progress. No one listens. There's never going to be a change.
Well,
Right.
yeah, well said. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Patricia,
also,
yeah.
I think why this COVID and pandemic has shed some light on it is because it's always been there, as we know. But I think previously there have been other issues that have always kind of like taken like a forefront and kind of like out there. So I don't know if we can look back how many years. I'm trying to think of an example of something else that would overshadow, something. So there's a hot topic, the government's all gung-ho on putting money towards something, and then we forget about the other issues, right? And something will kind of override, abuse and that sort of thing. And with the pandemic, I think with the isolation piece, I think that's when it really started to make sense. And they said, oh yeah, we forgot about this. Yes, there are women and kids that are trying to get out. And I think it was more even the children's piece as well, because they were also in the abusive home and with CAS involvement in different things. So other agencies saw different things as well. So I think all of them probably came around and said, listen, the kids are in the home, they're experiencing the abuse as well. And the mom can't leave. There's a pandemic. What are we, how are we going to support them? Right. So I know that police were very busy during that time. And I think, again, more community awareness. And I think that's why it kind of came back out again, and it's out there again, as an issue. But again, if we don't start with women and children, how do we change our society? And how do we don't, if we don't educate even our boys, because it's one thing to educate our girls, but our boys and girls. So again, going back to teaching them in the school system, what it's like to be in a healthy relationship. How should you act towards a partner? What is appropriate? What is not? All of these different things. I mean, it starts there, I think, right?
Agreed.
That's a big point. Yeah. And also with like Ross's point before, social media. So if you start in grade school and teach them, what bullying is, cyberbullying, and being on social media and being abusive there, if you start at that age, hopefully you can kind of, bring that awareness and you can make that change. Otherwise, it's still going to carry on.
Patricia, you mentioned that other things override. And I think even mental health, the phrase mental health and depression, but where does that come from? Because abuse can certainly generate both of those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And just before we get on to the next topic, I want to remind everybody listening that, this is a safe environment. This is a safe place. If you have any questions for either Terry or Patricia, please, let us know. We can get to your questions at the end, but this is a very safe environment. We support and love all your questions. So, feel free to ask. And at the end, you'll find links to both Patricia and Terry if you ever want to communicate with them. But if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to ask. And if there's one question for a certain individual, just let us know and we'll get to them. But I wanted to talk about, right now we're talking about domestic, the house, being in that environment. But the one thing that we've noticed, and I'm sure both of you have noticed, is the increase of abuse towards women in the workplace. Now, a topic that we tend to forget. We always think domestic abuse or abuse is in the household. It's either physical on the outside, in the public area. But we've noticed more and more women are complaining and, unfortunately, falling on deaf ears about abuse, mental health abuse, emotional abuse in the workplace. Now, this is, again, a loaded question for both of you, is how can one go about getting the support or speaking up without fearing that they will lose their job or being judged? And I think that's one thing, especially for my mom. I've even had a conversation with her when she was alive, when she was working, why don't you say something? And she would say, but what will that do? I need a job. And I would always think to myself, again, that doesn't seem right. I mean, as a kid, you're always told if you see something, you tell an adult or you tell someone superior if something is happening, you get results.
Right.
Why are women in the workplace going backwards and not being willing to say something with that fear? So what are both of your thoughts on this topic?
I think it's getting better, actually, of women coming forward. Look at all the cases of sexual abuse. And these people were famous. And these were other people in their lives. And so I think more of it is happening, but an awful lot more needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with that, Terry. The other thing that I'm thinking is, I think, and this could be, a perspective, but when somebody's in an authority position, they have the power and control, right?
Yes.
So, and power and control also it is in abuse in general. It's there. So I think when someone is, faced with, how do I bring this forward? They're afraid of what's going to happen because this person has power and control. So how are they going to get around that? If I say something, I've seen maybe last 6 months, I saw someone else speak up and now they're gone. If I speak up, I'm going to be gone, right? So again, fearing for your job, fearing for different things, but it's the power and control issue. You're just afraid to make that move because you know that in the end, this person that has the authority has the time and money and will probably win against you.
Right.
That's kind of what's kind of been out there, right? And it's those that are really, really strong and persevere and really try to get through that make it, but it does take a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And some people say, is it really worth it in the end, right?
It takes bravery too.
Absolutely.
You have to be very brave.
And power and control is something that we were just talking about in the domestic side of things, is their power being taken away. And it's sad and scary to think that they're coming from an environment like that and then going into a workplace that's similar. Their power and their control is taken away. You would think that that's a place where I should feel empowered. I'm working, I'm doing a job that I love. I shouldn't have to go back to that thinking that I'm living in both worlds, the same thing. My power and control has been taken away. And I think in the corporate world, people going back to work from the pandemic probably are going back into the workplace not quite ready, but they're in a position because of affordability and the cost of living. They have to go back, knowing that job potentially, again, if I lose this job or quit, I might not be able to find another job. So women are held captive in both situations. And power and control, I think, is something that we've talked about is so much profound. And I think for both of you, I would love to get your thoughts on your own personal experience and thoughts on individuals who are listening. How did you, if in some cases, or how do they take back the power and control for themselves? Like, how do they do that?
Well, for what I can see happen sometimes is if a woman is strong enough to recognize that they are in that situation of power and control, they need to reach out to whoever they can within their employer to kind of say, listen, this is what's happening to me. So I think recording conversations, having email trace of, what's been discussed, putting things together in order for them to bring it forward so that there's proof and evidence, because a lot of times it's hearsay, right? Or it's that's what you said and they didn't say that, right? So you have proof. So trying to manage, what you can and get information and bring it forward to HR or bring it forward to somebody within your employment that, would be willing to back you up on it. And I think if you start there, that's a good foundation, right? You've got to start and you have somebody listening to you. and hopefully your employer can back you up on certain things. And again, maybe that's all it takes is one person to talk to another. That's maybe a supervisor or a manager in whatever position, and then working with that person. Now, if that person happens to be the one that's abusing you within the workplace, then obviously you can't go to them. You have to go to somebody safe, and hopefully you do have somebody within your workplace that you can go to and bring these things forward. So definitely it's gathering information, it's getting things clear and bringing that forward so that you can get some support moving forward from that point.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes companies do have counseling available to their employees. And so that might be another avenue to go into as well. Some counseling as to how to approach the situation with tact and having your facts together.
Mhm. Yeah.
And sometimes it's a misunderstanding. Sometimes we take what people say and do one way, and they had no intention to hurt. And sometimes in a work environment, they'll bring the two people together to talk about it in a rational way. And I know that sometimes in human resource departments, that's part of their job is to look after employees' well-being and actually helping them with communication between one another. So that's another thing that sometimes happens. Not all jobs have those tools or resources, but when they do, they're really helpful.
Yeah, it's a good point, because again, you hope that the working environment is not like that. And if it is, there is individuals or a group or a counselor or someone connected that you can have that communication with.
Yeah.
Because in some cases, outside sources are probably a little bit more supportive in some cases because they're not in that working relationship.
Mhm.
But another thing is for both of you, when a woman comes to speaks to you, they're making the progress, they're getting there, they're starting, they're rebuilding, they're taking back their power. Do you have tips for them to help rebuild their mental health? Do you have any solutions or tools or things that you would recommend? Because there might be some individuals listening that are in that process of, I'm almost there, I just need an extra oomph. Do you have, both of you have any tips or suggestions or, tools that they could utilize to keep strong, to take that power, to keep it strong? Patricia, I would go for you.
Okay, so I think what I would suggest if they're moving forward and they're doing well is to just always say to them, what is your end goal here? If you've come this far, your end goal, you can see it. So keep working, moving forward towards that. Keep up your support systems, keep up, whatever it is at home. Like, so for example, some women like to journal, you're journaling, keep up your self-care, keep up all of those things that you're doing right now, because you are moving in the right direction and you can see that you're feeling so much better. Like they'll even say, I can't believe I haven't felt this good in so long. Right. So it's like keeping that momentum and always encouraging them to move forward. And they will, if they're almost there and they're getting there, they will continue to get the support, because I do believe that they see that they are so much better and they can move forward. And that's just a constant reminder that they've made the right choice, right? And for themselves and for their kids, should that be the case. Mm-hmm. But yeah, always be there to support them at all times.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I work, and I'm sure Patricia works from a strength-based approach, always recognizing their growth, their steps, their baby steps, because when you put a whole bunch of baby steps together, it's one giant step. And I really liked when you said self-care. Self-care is so important. And women often feel so guilty about doing nice things for themselves, whether it's to have a bubble bath. There's going to be some silly things I say here, but bubble bath or painting your nails, whatever works for you. There's no guilt behind any of those things, because they help us to grow and they help us to be strong. And those kind of things really, really help us to know the importance of ourselves and that we are enough. Mm-hmm. So encouragement, you mentioned that word, Patricia, encouraging your clients and acknowledging where they were and where they are now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
very true. Yeah. You know, if you are in that stage of moving forward and making progression, that's an achievement. That should just be something very proud of. I mean, like anything, we always achieve the small steps. And in this situation, small steps are a wonderful achievement and should be very proud of.
For
You know,
sure.
self-care is something that we talk about a lot. And I would love to get both of your self-care routines, because both of you are female working in the corporate world, you know, business owners, you know, entrepreneurs. You know, you may have had situations like this yourself. You hear about it on a daily basis, but you personally, you also have to take care of yourself. You have to self-care. So what are your self-care regimens? And Patricia, I'll go with yours first.
So my self-care is really and truly being okay with what I need to do for myself. So if I really and truly am overwhelmed by a work week and I find that I need some time, I really will carve out that time for myself. And it can be doing anything, which is quite simple. I love to cook. So cooking in the kitchen, I will put my music on. I'm there, and everybody knows food prep's going on. So, you know, everybody in the household knows where I'm at and what I'm doing. And I enjoy that. You know, I spend time with friends, family, and I do things that I find are really, you know, inspire me and keep me going and energize me. So I always look for those types of things. I also look for my peace and tranquility. So I'm one of those people that needs balance in my life. So as much as I love having people, family, and friends and all that going on, I also need to have my own personal time and alone time.
Right.
And that means reading a book or listening to a podcast or trying to improve doing something else, anything enjoyable that I like to do, just to kind of, again, re-energize and get myself, you know, kind of give myself that extra boost that I need to keep going. So yeah, so that's what I do for self-care.
I love it.
Sounds
And
good to me.
Yeah, sounds pretty good
Sounds
to
really good.
Yeah, sounds real good to me, actually.
Yeah.
And Terry, what are your self-care regimens or routines?
Well, it's not in stone. Let me just put it that way. And it changes. It changes a lot depending on my needs. I really listen to my body and my mind. When I'm overwhelmed, I listen to that. I really do listen to that and say, okay, take a step back. I taught at a local college. I taught social service worker students at a local college for over 5 years, and I taught them life skills. And one of the lessons that we had, and it was on leisure, and it was about the importance of leisure in our life, the necessity for leisure in our life, whether that's cooking like Patricia does or has her quiet time. We all need that, and it recharges our batteries. And that lesson was so important for me to have that lesson when I was becoming a life skills coach, and also teaching it, because I mentioned it earlier, we often feel guilty about taking some time for ourselves, but it is so very, very important. And as a counselor, debriefing with other counselors or colleagues, very, very important, because some of the things that we see and hear are pretty hard to see and hear.
Yeah.
And knowing where to put that is very important for our well-being. So that's part of self-care. And I love to read a book once in a while too, Patricia. I think reading for me, if it's a really good book, it just captivates me.
For sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
true. Those are wonderful self-care regimens, very similar to mine. I do read a lot of books. If you can't see the books behind me that I'm starting to tackle right now. But yeah, I think we all have to understand, especially individuals like yourself, Terry and Patricia, that are working, with these individuals, working in this community, that you also deserve time for self-care, because, you are the fuel, and we need to make sure that you are fully fed as well. So I have a question that just came in. I think it's a really great question. I'd love to get both of your thoughts on this. So the question is, I know someone is going through an emotional abuse and the person is not aware of it. How can I help without being nosy? And I think that's a really great question, because I know in a situation like myself, I was afraid to ask or suggest that this could be a situation, because then I would thought it's not my place. I'm being nosy. I'm assuming. For that, what are tips for yourselves for that individual that's saying, I know this is going on, but I don't want to be nosy?
That's a really awkward situation. Do you agree, Patricia?
Yes, but I think if this person is able to maybe talk to someone who's in this relationship that's emotionally, abusive, is to maybe ask some simple questions, and questions that are like, does this happen very often? Or, oh, okay. And I understand that that's something that's normal for you. Maybe showing or telling them what's normal for this person asking the question. This is what I do. So these little subtle things to kind of make the comparison that that's what you do and this is what's happening to you. That doesn't seem right to me, but you don't say it that way. You say, oh, okay, that's what happens to you, but this is what I do. And it's saying different things like, how do you feel about that when that happens? And it's not like, imposing, you're in an abusive relationship, you have to get out. It's asking a question in order for them to reflect so they can understand that this is happening. Otherwise, they won't be able to understand it if you don't allow them to reflect on it, because they will think this is normal for them. They already normalize that.
Another thing you might do is to put a feeling. You might suggest a feeling. I just used the word awkward, but if they're sharing something that's happening to them that's an emotional, to you it's just blatant emotional abuse, you can suggest, well, that must feel debilitating, or you have to use a word that relates to the situation. And they might say, well, yeah, I feel terrible when that happens, or I feel helpless, I feel hopeless. But if you can give it a name, a feeling, and use that word, it can open the conversation. And I totally agree with you, Patricia, when you said you can't say it right out, because you're just going to close the door. The door is not just going to be closed. That door is going to have a lock on it. And they're not going to tell you anything in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I wonder where that comes from, that fear of being nosy, or that fear of, not wanting to step in on anyone's toes, or assuming that maybe they're just, everything's fine, it's just a bad day. And I wonder, how can we resolve that? And I think going back to what Patricia was saying was, we need to educate the youth at the very beginning about these situations.
Oh, yeah.
And, because again, myself, I knew that a friend of mine was going through this situation, and I was wanting to step in and say something and ask the questions, but I was very fearful, because in the back of my mind, the little person was going, it's none of your business. It's fine. This is life. You talk to your parents and say, oh, people fight all the time. This is part of a relationship. So you're ingrained in your brain to think, well, this is normal, totally fine, I won't step in. And I think at a young age, we need to show the youth of all, boys and girls and all genders, that these are the signs, and these could potentially be the triggers. So keep an eye on it, because in school you learn about sex ed, but that's it. We need to learn about other situations in that atmosphere, and relationship building, and signs of things that need to be heard, or the signs of trouble, I guess they would say. For both of you, I always like to say, where do you see, how can you see this changing, and what are your insight and goals and thoughts about where you want to see this change? And for both of you, I would love to get your thoughts on, where do you hope that this change comes from, and when do you think this change will come, and where do you want to see it come from?
I think it has to come from people being educated and just talking about it and getting the word out. And as far as, I just had an afterthought, invite the person, let them know that that you're available, that you're available. If you want to talk more about it, I be available. Just an invite.
Mhm.
just an invite. But I think education is so important. The fact that they've got ads out now, they never would have talked about that years ago. They're talking about abusive situations now, and also putting links out where people, and phone numbers where people can call. So
Mhm.
educating.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
The education piece is huge, and then awareness, and then also to understand that we as people, you know, if we feel that there's something going on in someone's life, we may be right or we may be wrong,
Right.
but isn't that a chance that we should take? Because if we are going to help someone, you know, being that next door neighbor that hears, you know, the yelling and the fighting and the arguing, and they're not calling the police, they can always call police anonymously, right? You don't have to say who you are. You can just say, there's something going on. Would someone be able to come over and check? Right. So you can anonymously do it. But I guess they're afraid that, you know, if they find out that it's them, if this person is that abusive, then they're going to be involved in their life, and that's too much for them to handle. So again, it's kind of like that standoffish, but at the same time, there are ways of getting around that.
Mhm.
But yeah, but it's just how do I see this changing? Again, I think it's education, awareness, and just being kind to one another, because I think we forget that sometimes, right? We need to be kind to one another, and sometimes that just means, you know, listening to your next door neighbor, and when she tells you something, maybe say, hey, listen, you can call the shelter and get some help, you
Right.
know, or you can do this and try to get some help there, right? So I mean, there's different ways of doing things, and do I see this changing? I'm hoping that it will. I think
Mhm.
it's slow and gradual, but you know, the only way we can make change is to do some different things, because you know what they say about the, you know, the definition of insanity: keep doing the same things and you expect a different result. We
Yeah.
might have to do some different things,
Yeah.
some different awareness, and again, going back to the youth, which I think is very important. Hopefully funding comes back for that. Hopefully that's
That is so important.
Very
So
important.
important.
yeah, very important.
And I think it's true. We need to start taking action. And if we get slapped on the wrist for doing it, it's worth it because we're doing something about it. And I think that's the biggest issue, is the fear of getting in trouble for doing something different or thinking outside the box in these situations. Because again, doing the same thing is getting us to the same spot, which is nowhere in some cases. So if there's people out there listening, if you feel and know that there's a change that can be made and you can make that change, make the change. Because again, change comes from all of us thinking outside of the box, because again, we are witnessing that box has been filled and we're running out of ideas. We need outside. And I think the younger generation, especially with social media and these platforms, have a tool that we never had back in the day to speak. We have people that can go on their phone and, you know, speak in front of millions of people about a topic like this and get instant results. That never happened back then. So I think the younger generation, education is key, but utilizing your tools that you have in hand to make a difference is key. And I think that's the change is coming through technology too, as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And awareness.
Awareness, absolutely.
Yeah, Patricia's mentioned it so many times this evening, and it really is so important, awareness.
It is. And you know what? The wonderful thing is both of you tonight is bringing awareness to it. You know, we're talking about it. We are making a difference. We are changing. We are thinking outside of the box.
Good.
I have another question, which is a great question for both of you. I'd love your thoughts on this. When a woman is getting or being abused, is there a sign that they are in trouble? Now, both of you in your positions probably know there's certain different signs: physical, verbal, nonverbal. Is there signs, if someone is listening right now, is there a sign that they should look out for? I would love to get both of your insights on that too.
Patricia?
Yeah, Patricia, go for it.
Okay, so first of all, if you have this person in your life or you know about them, what has changed for them? Are they forthcoming with information? Do they speak a lot? Are they withdrawn? Do they look like they're very tired? I mean, I'm talking about physical appearance now. If you're seeing the person, have they been, you know, not showing up to things that they used to show up to? You know, the isolation piece, are they Are they only, taking the kids to the school and going back, and then you don't see them in the afternoon? They don't pick them up. He picks them up. Some different patterns that are happening with that person. And maybe again in conversation, is she not including certain things? Is she's not speaking? Is she doing a lot of listening and just kind of withdrawn? Because that's a really big sign when they're not saying a lot. Especially, so again, if they're in a school system, if they're other moms, you're going to see that there's going to be less conversation from them. They're unable to express themselves, again, for fear, right? For fear of being noticed, that there's something going on in their home.
Yeah.
Or the other thing is, they used to go to different things and now they're not showing up. They just don't show up. They're not part of anything. They're dropping out of the things that they used to go to.
Right. Yeah. And that's true. I mean, there's so many different ways of sharing your thoughts on this and the discussions, and even individuals who are being abused. There's ways of asking for help in some cases without actually asking for help. But I also think, on the other hand, us as friends and families and individuals, we also have to be educated on what those signs could be too. We in social media, there's a lot of movements going around where different hand gestures would symbolize that they need help. We're in that modem of progression, and we're getting there to different signs, because in some cases these individuals may be held captive with their domestic abuser, and they can't say or do anything physical. So we need to learn the signs that potentially, like both of you are saying, that we could go, that doesn't seem right, that's different. She's made some changes, which is different, and I've never seen her do that. Kind of being detectives in a way, without being fearful of being nosy, paranoid. I think we need to get that stigma away of, if something is different and something has changed dramatically and something doesn't feel right, as we know, if we walk into the forest and we get that feeling of like, something doesn't feel right, I need to turn around. We need to use that same instinct in this situation too, as well. And I think that's key.
Question. Yeah, simple question. How's it going? Are you okay?
I mean, that itself is how many times has someone asked you that question yourself? How's it going? How are you? And all of a sudden just ignites emotions, and you just open up. And I think that's the same thing. Both of you said the same thing. It's the simple question of, how are you? I remember working in the communities and going up to individuals at the shelter and simply just asking, well, how are you doing? And click, everything comes out, without me being aware that powerful question was even that powerful. And I think, again, it just shows that people care. And I think that's what we need to show more of, is we are here, we're speaking about it, we care, we want to make a change, we want to make a difference in this kind of environment. And we are doing things that we can with the tools that we have. And I think we are building more tools. So, but it is a topic that would go on for hours and hours and hours, which I would have no problem with. I'm sure just to be the three of us, everybody would go to sleep. We'd just keep continuing to talk. But I really want people to know that there is support out there. And especially with the individuals, yourself, Terry and Patricia, I want them to know that you're here. So if they wanted to reach out to both of you, Patricia, I'll ask you first, where can we find you? Where could they communicate with you?
So through PsyMood, and then also through Psychology Today. I do have my information up there, and just my email as well. Someone could email me if they wanted to, and I can leave that with you. They can check my website, which is bubtrue.ca. And hopefully, if anybody has any other questions past tonight, you can certainly reach out, and I'll see what I can do to help.
Absolutely. And Terry, where can someone find you as well?
Well, PsyMood is the place to go. They have great webinars and great counselors. And it's really nice that they have counselors that speak different languages. I don't. I only speak English, but they do have counselors that speak a variety of languages, which I think is really important for people that speak a different language, so that they can be truly understood and listened to. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And another question that I would love to end this with, the questions for both of you. Each of you, Terry and Patricia, if you want to make one powerful statement on this topic and leave with a bang, as they say, what would your final words of wisdom be? Patricia, I'll start with you.
Oh, you're gonna start with
Oh,
me.
I lucked out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we all paused, but I just decided to go to Patricia.
Thanks, Ross. No problem.
Yeah.
I guess my final thought for this evening is, I've been doing this work for about 10 years now. And what I say is, if I can help one woman and one family, and if I can make a difference in someone's life, I'm going to try. So every person that we try to reach, hopefully can move forward and have a better life. And that's really why we're in this, hoping to get the awareness out and making sure that everybody lives their best life, whatever that is.
Mhm.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And for me, I guess I would like to say that everybody's story is an important story, and I'm willing to listen. And your story is about you,
Mhm.
and it's important for everybody to have quality of life. And everybody has choices, whether they are in an abusive situation or in a situation that they really, really are not comfortable in, then reach out to somebody somewhere. There's lots of people out there in this profession. And so just reach out, because you're worth it.
Absolutely.
Amazing. That's beautiful. I mean, that's both of you, such eloquent thoughts. I mean, it's such a beautiful, and to this conversation and this webinar, it's meant a lot to me too. Again, personally, with my relationship with my mom and seeing and witnessing that, and the work that I do in the community, I think it means a lot to all of us that are listening and being a part of this webinar, that both of you took the time to be here with us. So I really do meaningfully thank you so much for both of you for being here. And for everyone listening and watching, you can book a 15-minute intake with both Terry and Patricia on PsyMood. In the chat, you'll see the links and information there. So you can always reach out to them, or you can reach out directly to PsyMood, PsyMood.com, and find them under the specialists, and they would be happy to do a 15-minute intake, free intake with you. And again, thank you all so much for being here. It's such a powerful topic. I know we could do so much more and go all night to the morning talking about this, but Terry, Patricia, thank you so very much for your time. Really do appreciate it. And it means a lot. So thank you very much for you both being here.
My absolute pleasure, Ross.
My pleasure as well. And thank you for having me.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for listening. We're wishing you a safe evening, enjoyable next day, weekend ahead, every day. Thank you all so much for being here with us, and take care, everyone. Thank you so much.